The main gimmick of Frank Herbert's universe is Melange, also known as the Spice. Incidentally, the term spice today is mostly used by a small number of old-school gamers whose introduction to Dune came through a once popular strategy game. But no matter what you call it, this treasure of the deadly desert became the cornerstone of conflict for an entire epic. And the most incredible thing is that it is precisely thanks to Melange that the world of Dune has retained its unique identity to this day. So what exactly is it? The legendary Spice of Arrakis. According to the legend created by the writer, in unimaginably ancient times, times that humanity has yet to reach, Arrakis was an ordinary Earth-like planet. It was simply unlucky. A mysterious wandering sect called the Muad'Dru, about whom nothing is known, visited Arrakis during their travels. What these people did, what they believed in, no one in Frank Herbert's universe remembers anymore. Only runic messages scattered here and there remain as traces of the Muad'Dru. Even those have never been deciphered. Some cults revered these artifacts as holy relics and sources of universal wisdom, though it is still unclear why people ever considered the rare traces of the Muad'Dru to be such things. The main legacy left behind by these ancient wanderers was the strange terraforming of Arrakis, which transformed it from a flourishing paradise into a scorched hell. Surviving in this hell is no easy task. That is because the Muad'Dru introduced sand trout to the planet. The only alien life form in the Dune universe, the sand trout adapted Arrakis to its own needs, while the Muad'Dru moved on and vanished into the ages. The planet became a vast, sandy desert, racked by terrifying storms and traversed by gigantic worms. These titans hide beneath the sands, and only solid rock outcroppings can offer protection from them. The wind shifts the dunes, and on the surface, here and there, appears a substance found nowhere else in the known universe. Whether the sect deliberately or accidentally brought this calamity to Arrakis remains unknown. Neither Frank Herbert nor his son ever bothered to enlighten the reader on this matter. When, in the year 1400 before the Guild, the imperial researcher Yanshuf Ashkoko discovered the spice in the sands of Arrakis, people were not particularly interested in how it was formed. Scientific studies were conducted for the purpose of colonizing the planet. Nevertheless, researchers carefully examined all the resources of the prospective future colony. This was how Yanshuf Ashkoko identified the geriatric properties of Melange. Later, Emperor Shakad the Wise claimed credit for this discovery, but for the old empire, the spice from a remote world was of little significance. In those days, humanity possessed other methods of prolonging life, entirely unrelated to the constant consumption of psychotropic substances of unknown origin. Later still, after humanity's conflict with thinking machines and the destruction of everything connected to them, hardly anyone was interested in how the precious melange was actually produced. Some fragments of information were uncovered by the planetologist Pardo Kynes, but as it turned out, he did not attach much importance to ancient studies of the spice. As a result, for a long time, many people simply ignored the connection between melange and the life cycle of the sandworms. Indeed, understanding the development of this alien silicon-based life form proved difficult. For centuries, humans merely harvested and consumed the spice, while considering the worms enemies and attempting to destroy them. Fortunately for both species, this turned out to be far from easy. The secret of Melange's appearance in the sands of Arrakis is not actually all that great. The sand trout, successfully introduced by the mysterious Muad'Dru, were small in size and exceptionally resilient. It is they who should be thanked for the unnaturally dry climate of Arrakis and the absence of open bodies of water. What? No open water? Does Arrakis have water at all? Strangely enough, the desert planet does have water. The omnipresent sand trout simply hide it deep beneath the sands. These small, leathery creatures with neither heads nor legs possess the remarkable ability to collect water and encapsulate enormous quantities of it at great depths. There, in secluded caverns, the sand trout, feeding on this water and on something else entirely unknown, produce what is known as pre-spice mass. To be honest, this mass is nothing more than a mixture of processed water and the metabolic byproducts of sand trout. Once saturated with water, countless tiny creatures enter a state of dormancy, eventually transforming into a young worm. Unfortunately, while the larvae attempt to transition to the next stage of existence, the pre-spice mass they created explodes. Driven upward by the pressure of the gas it generates, the cradle of the young worm bursts violently to the surface. Most of the sand trout perish in this explosion. This is likely why the newborn worm will be only 3 to 9 meters long, no more. The substance expelled to the surface, under the merciless sun, transforms into the very melange so coveted by people throughout Frank Herbert's known universe. Had they been a bit wiser, they would have extracted the spice directly from the bodies of sand trout, just as Freeman children had done since time immemorial. After all, if one gently squeezes a defenseless, leathery little creature, it is possible to obtain a perfectly sufficient portion of concentrated melange. As for the life cycle of worms and sand trout, this cycle is eternal. A worm can live for several millennia, but only if it is not devoured by other worms or does not accidentally encounter an underground reservoir, having burrowed too deep into the sands. Water is poisonous to the worm. When it comes into contact with it, the enormous creature dies, breaking down into a vast multitude of sand trout. And they, in turn, will begin gathering water and producing spice, to the delight of the freeman and the harvester crews alike. We already mentioned that Yanshuf Ashkoko's discovery did not have much impact on events in the Old Empire, didn't we? Painful and far from accessible to everyone, people of that era had their own method of life extension, and it must be said, it was far more effective than the spice. Constant consumption of melange causes addiction, while abuse leads to altered consciousness and irreversible mutations. The procedure used in the Old Empire, on the other hand, caused no suffering beyond the pain experienced during its execution. Performed only once, it halted aging and rendered the recipient virtually immortal. No one would likely be surprised if it turned out that the transformed Vorian Atreides was closely watching the struggles of his descendant Paul Muad'Dib. Humanity could have lived happily ever after, if not for one crucial but. All the achievements of the Old Empire first fell into the hands of the Titans, and then of Omnius. They were cursed by the League of Nobles as the corrupting influence of thinking machines. Thus, humanity lost all advanced medical technologies, and the Butlerian Jihad made it impossible to reinvent them. While on most League worlds the most advanced technologies were banned, machines within the synchronized empire proved incapable of creating anything new. This led to a stagnant status quo, one that was broken more by chance than by inevitability. Still, our interest lies with the spice, not with the twists and turns of the struggle between the League of Nobles and Omnius. The people living on Arrakis used melange instead of ordinary spices, especially since the brown substance closely resembled ground cinnamon in both appearance and aroma. The inhabitants of the desert planet were not yet the freemen we know from the chronicles of Dune. During the time of the Butlerian Jihad, the sands were home to outcast Zensuni, who had fled the Titans in ancient times to the most remote planets. They refused to join the League of Nobles, professing either pacifism or simple cowardice. As a result, even before the active war with the synchronized empire began, numerous slavers hunted the Zensuni like game. For some reason, the League was unwilling to forgive followers of this particular religious cult for their refusal to join the struggle. Thus, the spice, strengthening the immune system and significantly delaying aging, ended up in the hands of people hostile to the civilized world. Arrakis itself was such a remote backwater that even slavers visited it extremely rarely. No profit from selling slaves could justify the long journey and the arduous chase across the sands. This state of affairs might have lasted for many more centuries, had it not been for an overly self-confident slaver named Tuk Kider, who decided to try his luck on Arrakis. The cunning Tleilaxu set out on a distant expedition in search of easy prey. Instead, by the time he had all but lost hope of even breaking even, he brought back to the civilized worlds either salvation or a curse. Realizing the futility of slave hunting, Tuk Kider began searching Arrakis for any commodity suitable for trade. And he found one. A certain Naib named Dartha offered the Tleilaxu a taste of the spice. The shrewd slaver proved to be a talented businessman, quickly understanding who might have use for such a strange product from the desert. Aurelius Venport. That was the man Kider intended to sell the new commodity to. The unloved consort of the supreme sorceress of Rosak, Aurelius Venport had spent many years trying to prove his devotion to the proud Zufa Senva. However, the lady of his heart was interested only in talented female pupils and the struggle against thinking machines. She completely ignored Aurelius's biological and pharmaceutical research. Moreover, the haughty Zufa considered profitable business a base occupation, much like the aristocrats of antiquity. Yet Aurelius Venport did not give up. His competent leadership helped the population of Rosak avoid inevitable destruction during attacks by Cymex and thinking machines. His lucrative trade operations allowed the planet to live in prosperity, providing the sorceresses with a reliable rear. The spice brought by Kider was duly appreciated by Aurelius. The proud sorceresses rejected any pharmaceutical innovations, relying solely on their natural abilities. But within the League of Nobles, there were plenty of people eager to develop a taste for a mild narcotic that enlightened the mind and prolonged life. The new product sold extremely well, especially since it was endorsed by the Grand Patriarch of the Jihad, Iblis Ginjo. The spread of the spice proved exceptionally timely. During the plague known as the Scourge of Omnius, only Melange could save the doomed. It may even have saved the human race from extinction. Yet its medical application turned out not to be the substance's greatest value. When Norma Senva uncovered the principle behind Holtzman Fields and, based on it, invented a technology for instantaneous travel through folded space, humanity gained the long-awaited upper hand in the exhausting war. But every barrel of honey has its spoonful of tar. Piloting ships equipped with Holtzman engines required a degree of precision that even forbidden computers could not provide. Desperately testing countless methods, Norma Senva reached the core of the problem. To travel safely through folded space, the gift of prescience was required. In her haste to solve this complex challenge, Norma repeatedly exceeded the safe dosage of spice. A coincidence? Perhaps. But the solution was found. Melange, so painstakingly harvested on the deadly Arrakis, proved to be the only absolutely safe way to guide new ships to a precisely predetermined destination. From that moment on, the spice became the most valuable substance in the universe. The navigators created by Norma Senva, inhaling unimaginable quantities of melange in gaseous form, lost their human appearance but gained the gift of foresight. Journeys across vast distances finally became not only fast, but completely safe. Unfortunately, this discovery came a little too late. The Butlerian Jihad claimed countless lives, including many lost due to inaccurate navigation of ships equipped with Holtzman engines. Norma Senva began training her priceless navigators already under the new empire proclaimed by Faken Carino. Arrakis transformed from a forgotten backwater into a source of vital raw material, and humanity rushed headlong to divide the spice, without giving a thought to where it actually came from. And of course, ownership of such a crucial resource immediately sparked a serious conflict. The vastly swollen Venport Corporation entered the fray, along with the Carino emperors, Faken's grandsons Salvador and Roderick, and strangely enough, the deranged Butlerians. The latter, however, would have gladly destroyed the planet along with everything on it. With the beginning of active spice trade established by Aurelius Venport and Tuk Kedair, the first true freemen appeared in the deserts of Arrakis. They were followers of Salim the Worm Tamer. Later, escaped slaves from Poratrin, also Zensuni, joined them. And only Salim, the leader of these outcast bandits, saw in Melange visions the connection between the sandworms and the spice. Realizing the destruction of Arrakis and the worms in the distant future, Salim foresaw the calamities that the outsiders would bring to the planet. Sadly, not everyone listened to him, but those who did not only attacked spice harvesters and returned the melange to Shai Hulud. These very bandits became the freemen, the skilled warriors of the desert. Tragically, in his visions, Salim failed to discern the cunning Missionaria Protectiva, which managed to implant outsiders into the very heart of the free people. Meanwhile, while the freemen waged their hopeless struggle confined to a single planet, the Corino Empire nearly devoured itself. Once again, the issue of control over Arrakis and the spice was resolved by Norma Senva, who persuaded Emperor Roderick to establish the Spacing Guild upon the ruins of Venholtz. From that point on, humanity effectively fell into bondage to a substance that smelled of cinnamon. For without interstellar travel, the valiant victors over the machines would have slid into a true medieval age. Humans are, by their very nature, freedom-loving beings. So it is hardly surprising that after several thousand years, dependence on the Spacing Guild began to weigh heavily on emperors and lesser princes alike. There was only one way to rid themselves of the dominance of the all-powerful navigators, to try to obtain the spice by other means. What the Corino dynasty and various other ruling aristocrats did not attempt. There were several completely disastrous efforts to transplant sandworms to other planets. The reason is obvious. Without fully understanding the life cycle of these desert monsters, the organizers of these ventures were doomed to failure from the start. Emperor Elroot IX attempted, together with the Bene Tleilax, to organize the production of synthetic spice. Unfortunately for the Emperor and his accomplices, this scheme also collapsed spectacularly. Only Leto, the second Atreides, the God Emperor of Dune, managed to find the one correct path. By merging with Sandtrout, he transformed into a worm. All other worms he systematically destroyed by returning Arrakis to its original state, that is, by transforming it into an Earth-like planet. Leto II succeeded in accumulating and concealing enormous reserves of melange and became its sole owner. The mighty orders of the Bene Tleilax and the Bene Gesserit alike, as well as the Spacing Guild, found themselves completely under his control. At the same time, the God Emperor seemed to encourage humanity to violate the strictures of the Butlerian Jihad, and so the Ixians once again began creating computers, machines that were in no way inferior to navigators. The cunning Tleilaxu finally derived a formula for synthetic spice, and most importantly, Leto II bred a lineage of humans immune to melange-based prescience. Is it not ironic that it was precisely under the influence of the spice that the last Atreides emperor managed to find the path to liberation from this treacherous substance? The God Emperor carried out an immense effort to weaken Melange's influence on human destiny. However, he never intended to deprive humanity of this genuinely useful substance entirely. On the contrary, he merely reduced its value as much as possible. Even in death, he followed his chosen path. By entering into symbiosis with Sandtrout, Leto II shared with this silicon-based life form a fragment of his own mind and the uniquely human ability to survive under any conditions. When the last great Atreides, after his death in the river, broke apart into myriads of sandworm larvae, these creatures were already capable of more than simply turning Arrakis back into a desert. Is that not why the last worm ultimately managed to take root on Chapter House? The history of Dune is tightly interwoven with the extraction, consumption, and distribution of melange, the single substance that is supposedly impossible either to synthesize or to obtain anywhere else. The value of the spice is a tale of how corrupting the dependence of a free human mind on a single irreplaceable resource can be. The Golden Path of the Atreides is a vivid demonstration of how an addict struggles to free himself from a severe dependency. Except that in Dune, the addict is an entire species. And yet the outcome is good in its own way. Perhaps this is how the author himself envisions freedom. And how do we envision it? That is all from me. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to leave a like, write a comment, and click the notification bell. Your activity is the best reward for me. Thank you for your attention. See you soon. Bye.